So the agenda for today, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to start by looking at what are Zoom hosts and co-hosts, what they can and cannot do. We'll look at some of the basic features and controls that are available to hosts and co-hosts. We'll look at how do you share your screen? How do you let others share your screen? Look at how to set up your screen and the various video settings, how to do the timing, how to record if someone requests a recording. And then we'll spend probably a good 20 minutes or so looking at the fun stuff, which is how to use breakout rooms. And then we'll have a quick summary and a list of references at the end. Let's start off with Zoom hosts and co-hosts. And we'll start off by defining what they are and some of the features that are available to them. Starting with the basics, in a Zoom meeting, there's going to be one host, but you can have an unlimited number of co-hosts. And for a speech contest, we recommend that you have at least 2 co-hosts on hand. If you have more co-hosts available, that's great, but you want at least 2 co-hosts to help the main host run the meeting. And they have slightly different roles and capabilities. So the host is the only one who can start the meeting. They can mute participants. They can also ask participants to stop their video. They can move participants from one breakout room to the other. They can record video, and they can also stop or allow others from recording. And also the host can designate their other people as co-hosts. The co-host can do most of what a host can do, but there's a few things that a co-host cannot do. So for example, a host can't actually start the meeting themselves. They can move themselves, but they cannot move other people to a breakout room. And also the co-host is not able to designate someone else as a host. So those are sort of the 3 things that a host can do that a co-host can't. And if you want a more detailed answer, this link at the bottom here is a pretty good article that Zoom put together, which has a very detailed table sort of listing what the capabilities are for hosts versus co-hosts. And you'll see this in the presentation that I sent out. So the first thing you're going to do if you're a Zoom host is you want to set up the basic controls and the settings for your meeting. And the way you do this is you just go open up your internet browser and you go into your meeting settings. You can use these links that you see here. You would sign into your Zoom account with just your regular Zoom email and password. Sign in, and you're going to see this screen over here. And you want to get into your meeting settings. So basically the way you would do it is you would go on the left-hand menu, click the settings button there, and you go into the meeting settings specifically, and then you'll get into the basic meeting settings. And this lets you set all the really basic settings. Most of the settings will leave as they are, the default settings, but there's a few that you want to check to make sure. First, since we are going to be using co-hosts, you want to make sure that the settings allow for you to have co-hosts. If this is not checked, you won't be able to set to allow co-hosts, and you'll be basically trying to do the whole thing yourself, which is not really feasible. So make sure your settings allow for meeting co-hosts. And that's probably the only basic setting that you really need to change. And we'll get into some of the advanced settings in just a minute here. Now let's look at some of the basic controls that you have as a meeting co-host. We'll start off with an overview. We'll look at how to manage participants in terms of policing video, audio, how to rename yourself or other participants like we did at the start of this meeting before you came here, how to make other people a host or a co-host, and finally, if necessary, how do you actually remove a participant and kick them out of the meeting. So this is your basic Zoom setup, and this is something you'll be seeing anytime you have a Zoom meeting open. And just going around the screen here, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, those are your basic meeting controls, and you see the enlarged view at the bottom as well. You have a button which lets you look at the participant list. There is the chat button, which opens up the chat window. And once those are open, they're displayed on the right-hand side, like you see here. Over in the middle, you have the green icon, which lets you share your screen if you wish to do that. There is the button that lets you record. There is the famous breakout room controls. And there is the reactions or emoticon buttons. We're not going to look at that today. And over on the bottom left of your screen, there is the basic controls to control your own camera and a microphone. So it's pretty simple, and we're going to look at most of these as we go along. As we mentioned, the host and the co-host, they can police the audio and video. So they can mute participant video and audio, and it's pretty easy to do that. You would just go into the participant list that we saw earlier. If you want to mute somebody or stop their video, you just hover over that person's name, and you'll see these two blue buttons appear once you hover over the name. So there's mute and more. And when you select the more button, you'll see the drop-down menu that you see at the bottom of the screen. There's options to stop video. You can make them a co-host. You can rename them, a whole range of things. If you have a large number of participants at your meeting and you need all of them to shut off their microphones right away, you can also hit mute all or unmute all. When you mute a person, that person can then restart their audio at any time. If you shut off someone's video, however, that video stays off until you give them permission to restart it. So just be careful. If you do shut off someone's video, they may ask you for permission later to restart it. And if they do ask for permission to restart it, you would just hover over their name again, go to the more button, and you'll see a little icon that says ask participant to restart their video. So that's just a little caveat, and make sure that the people at the start of the meeting know this, because if you mute their audio, they can restart it. But if you shut off their video, they're basically shut off until you let them restart it again. And so they should be aware of that, and they should be able to shut off their video by themselves. So that's just a few basic host controls. Renaming yourselves, most of you already did that today as we went in. It's pretty simple to rename yourself or someone else. You just hover over the name in question, select the more button and then the rename button. You type in their new name over here, hit OK, and it's done. And this applies for just renaming yourself or renaming anybody else. And as we mentioned before in the presentation on Monday, in a contest, you'll want certain officials to be renamed, like the SAA, the timer. You want the contestants to identify themselves, and we kind of went over all those details there. So if you have a large number of people, it's really good if they know how to rename themselves. It kind of takes the workload off of the hosts, but the hosts themselves can go through the list and rename as needed. And finally, if you have more than one person who is going to be a host, or a co-host rather, you have to know how to assign those privileges. And only the host, as we mentioned, can assign co-host privileges to someone else. So you have to know beforehand, who is it that I want to make a host or a co-host, identify them in the list, and then you select make host or make co-host as needed. And as we mentioned, there can only be one host, but there can be multiple co-hosts. And a couple points you really want to remember when you're designating someone else as a co-host is, first of all, only the host is able to designate a co-host. And if you're the host, you make someone else a host, that means that you are no longer a host. In fact, now you're just a regular participant. And if you want to be the host again, then the new host has to designate you as the host. So just be very careful before you designate someone else as a host. Other caveat here is that if you're going to designate a host or a co-host, just remember to do it before you move everybody into breakout rooms, because you can't do this inside a breakout room. It has to be done in the main session. So the main session for this meeting, that's where we were before we all got moved into here. And so I would not be able to designate someone as a host or a co-host inside the breakout room. If you're inside a breakout room and you need to make someone a co-host, what you're going to have to do is tell that person to hit leave room to get out of the breakout room, go back to the main session, what we like to call the lobby. Then you go back there yourself, and then you make that person a co-host. So it has to be done inside the main room. And if you do make someone a host, then you're no longer a host yourself. Just a few caveats about assigning privileges. Hopefully this doesn't happen to anybody, but if you have a large number of people, you may have someone there who isn't supposed to be there, or someone who's disruptive, and you need to kick them out of the meeting. Okay, so how do you do that? Again, very simple. Hover over the name in the participant list, go down to remove, you hit remove, and they're gone. And one thing to be clear is that remove is not the same thing as leave. So if you're inside a breakout room and you hit remove, it will not only take them out of the breakout room, it takes them out of the meeting entirely. And the default setting is once you remove someone, once you kick them out of the meeting, they're not able to get back in. Now, if you want, it's up to you to make that call. If you want to give that person the option to get back in, so just in case you inadvertently remove someone from the meeting, you can allow them to rejoin. You can go back into those basic meeting settings. You hit the basic settings, and you select allow remove participants to rejoin. And if this is selected and the removed person rejoins the meeting, they're going to be there in the main lobby area. They're not going to go directly back into the breakout room unless the host moves them back in. So that's a little caveat in case you ever have to remove someone from a meeting. So next, we're going to look at screen share. And screen sharing is here for a couple of reasons. As we talked about on Monday, the contest judges and the timers, they can show their ballots in a couple of ways. They can show a paper ballot up to the screen, the ballot count is counted, or if they prefer, they can actually share a PDF version of the ballot they filled out. And if they want to share that PDF ballot, well, then first of all, the hosts need to know how to enable screen sharing, and the judges themselves need to know how to share their screen. And screen sharing is also handy if you're at, say, an area contest and you want to show a promo video or a slide for the division contest or a video to advertise the district conference, and you want to share that to your attendees. So you got to know how to share your screen. And so today we'll look at how to control the screen, the share settings, and also how do you share your own screen if you're a judge or someone else needs to share the screen. Now, everybody will see this little green button there at the bottom of your screen. That's your screen share. And if you're a host, when you select the little up arrow at the screen share button, you'll see this little menu pops up. And you can select either one participant at a time or multiple participants can share simultaneously, and also the advanced screen sharing options. Once you get into the screen share control options, so if you select the options to select from, you'll see this little window that pops up. And there's a few ways you can do this. One is you select all participants can share, and this lets anybody share their screen, whether they're a host or co-host. And the downside, of course, is that someone potentially could share their screen at a bad time, say during a contest or something. If someone shares their screen without permission, the host can shut that down by just hovering over their name and hit stop share. But the default setting is that generally only the host and co-host are able to share their screen. So those are a few simple settings for the screen sharing. And if you want to share your screen, it's pretty simple. If you have the share privileges, you just go to the share screen icon at the bottom of the screen. It's that green icon, click it, and you see a window that pops up like this. And this window basically has all the files and windows that are open on your computer. So it can be either sharing your actual screen or any documents you have open on your computer if you want to share that. You just click whichever document you want to share, and you hit the share button here on the bottom right. And as an optional item, if you want to share a video, so you want to share something with sound, like I said before, a promo video to promote the district conference, for example, then you would hit share computer sound at the bottom left corner. This way, it'll share not only the video, it will also share the audio track from that video. Otherwise, if you don't hit share computer sound, you're just going to see the video plus any sound that your speakers actually pick up. So screen sharing, once you've authorized it, is pretty simple. So just make sure that the judges or anyone else who has to share the screen during the contest knows how to do this. So that's a little bit about screen sharing. So next, we're going to look at how do you set up your screen, how do you do the timing, especially with the virtual backgrounds, and how do you record if someone wants their speech recorded. So specifically, we'll look at setting up speaker view versus gallery view. We'll look at how do you pin the video, for example, pinning the timer. How do you hide non-video participants? So how do you hide people that have their cameras off? We'll look at a few recommended settings for participants and officials, and look at how to use the virtual timing backgrounds, and finally, how do you record a presentation if you want to record it. Let's start off with speaker versus gallery view. And I've illustrated a couple screenshots to show the difference. And on the left, you have gallery view. There's two people attending this particular meeting. And as you can see in gallery view, everybody's window is the same size. So there's two the same size. If you had 10 people on the meeting, you'd have 10 equally sized windows. On the right, you've got speaker view. And this is where whoever is speaking, so whoever has sound coming out, their window is the dominant one in the screen. They have the largest window, and whoever's not speaking, they have the smaller windows here on the side. And it's up to your own preference to to see, you know, what view you want to switch between. It's pretty quick to switch from one to the other. And judges may have their own preferences. The audience members may have their own preferences, but this is just what it looks like. And switching between the two, it's pretty easy. At the very upper right corner of your screen, you're going to see the little view icon you see here. And you just click that, and this lets you toggle back and forth between speaker and gallery view. And you just select whichever one you're looking for, click it, and away you go. So once you've selected between speaker view or gallery view, you may want to know, how do you actually pin a video? You may have heard about pinning the timer in a contest. And when you pin the video, basically it locks it there on your screen. Even if you have a whole bunch of other people with their cameras on, that video that you pinned was going to be visible at all times, regardless of how many other people have their screens on. And so it may be very handy to keep, say, the timer pinned, or you want to make sure that the chair is always visible. Or if you're a speaker, you may want to make sure that you yourself are always visible to make sure that you're looking as the way you want to look. Pinning a timer is pretty straightforward. Just hover over the window of the person that you actually want to pin. And in the upper right corner of that particular window, in that person's window, you'll see the blue square with the 3 dots. And just click on that, and you get this little menu that you see here. And you just click on pin, and that pins the video. And the default setting when you pin it is that it pins in speaker view, but if you want, you can always switch back to gallery view if you like, but it will stay pinned. And when you're done and you want to unpin the person, you just, you go to remove pin, which will be either on the bottom left corner of that person's screen or on the list you see here. Instead of pin, it'll be remove pin. So it's pretty handy to have, especially if you want to keep track of someone in particular in the contest. All right, so now that we've looked at how do you set up speaker versus gallery view, we know how to pin the timer, we know how to pin the speaker, or how to pin the contest chair. I want to look at how do you minimize the clutter on the screen. And there's a way to do a function called hide non-video participants. Basically, if someone has their video off, you're still going to see an icon on the screen. You'll see that this plain black window that we see here, it's called guest. This is someone who has their video off, but they're still there in the meeting. And so they're still displayed and they're still taking up space on the screen. If you want, you can actually make all the non-video participants disappear so that the only people that are visible on your screen are ones that actually have their camera on. And I've illustrated this sort of side by side. On the left, you have the 2 participants with the non-video participants displayed. One has video on, one is off. The person with the video on and the video off both have the same amount of space on the screen. When you select hide non-video participants, the person with the video off disappears from the screen completely. And so this is what you're going to see. The only ones that you'll see on the screen are people who have their videos on. And this is extremely important for a contest because, especially for a larger contest like area division contest, you may have dozens or even 100+ people in the contest. And if you want to keep track of the speaker or the timer or anybody else, you want to make sure that you can make all the non-video participants disappear from the screen. Because during a speech, for example, the only ones who are going to have their videos on are going to be the speaker and the timer. But if you're still showing all the non-video participants, they're all going to be cluttering your screen. So we hide non-video participants and everybody disappears except the ones that have the camera on. And it's pretty easy to do. The way you hide non-video participants is just hover over the window of anybody who has their camera off. And you click on the blue square in the upper right of that window, the 3 dots, and scroll down to hide non-video participants. And when you click this, it makes all the non-video participants disappear. Not just the one you clicked on, but everybody who has their camera off, they disappear. And they stay disappeared from your screen until they turn their cameras back on. All right. And once you're done with the non-video participants and you want to see everybody, regardless of whether they have the camera on or off, you just go back to the view button at the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom window. You click the view, show non-video participants, and once again, all the non-video participants show up on your screen. So that's pretty much all you need to do as far as hiding non-video participants. Make sure that all your contestants and all of the audience members know how to do this. And kind of summarized a quick list here of suggested settings for all your participants and your contestants. These are not rules, but it is something that I would recommend. And you can see what works for you. And each one of the contestants and the officials, they can play with their settings to see what they prefer. But these are just a few suggestions. So participants, they can switch between speaker and gallery view as they prefer. Judges may wish to have speaker view on because this gives you a larger view of the speaker. When you have it in gallery view and when the speech is underway, the speaker and the timer are both going to have half the screen taken up. If you want to have a really good view of the speaker but still have the timer visible, you can select speaker view. I'd recommend everybody hide non-video participants. That way it makes it a lot easier to pick out the timer and the speaker as well as the chair if they have their camera on. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of clutter on your screen. Not a bad idea to keep the timer pinned. Alternatively, if the contestant wants to have a larger view of themselves versus the timer, what the contestant can do is simply pin their own video, and that puts them up in speaker view as the largest image on the screen, but the timer is still going to be there. And one point to remember is that when you have all the non-video participants hidden, whether the timer is pinned or not, the timer is always going to be visible because the timer and the speaker are the only ones that have their cameras on at this point. So if you don't know how to pin the timer, just select hide non-video participants, and then the timer and the speaker, they're the only ones there. So those are a few simple suggestions that you can communicate to all the contestants and all the participants beforehand, and they can see what works best for them. Just make sure that they're familiar with how to do these basic functions. So this brings us to timing. And as we mentioned in the presentation on Monday, there's a couple of ways you can do the timing for a contest. You can either do the traditional route of actually holding up physical timing cards to the screen, the green, yellow, and red card. And if you do use physical cards, like I mentioned, make sure to actually write the words green, yellow, or red on it as well, because sometimes the colors don't really show well on camera. But if you're able to do it and your system permits it, you can also use virtual timing backgrounds. And these are virtual backgrounds that are digital backgrounds. They display on your screen. You can download these from Toastmasters.org at the link you see here. And it includes the green, yellow, and red cards. And you also have the official TI logo, and it also has the words green, yellow, and red on it. And so if you're able to do it, I would definitely recommend that the timer use the virtual backgrounds. And so we're going to show how to download them, load them into your Zoom backgrounds, and actually use them during the contest. Pretty easy to use. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go into your video controls. That's in the bottom left of your screen. And after you've gone into the Toastmasters.org site and downloaded these and saved these to a folder somewhere on your computer, you just click the video icon, and there's that little up arrow on the corner of the video icon. You click that, it brings up this menu you see here. And one of the options you see here is choose virtual background. That's what the timing background is. It's a virtual background. So you just hit choose virtual background. And when that happens, you're going to see a pop-up window that looks like this. And here's an enlarged view. So this window pops up when you hit choose virtual background. Ideally, by default, you should have background and filter selected in the left-hand menu. If not, just click it. And once you have that selected, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. You're going to see a list of backgrounds to choose from. And the way you add one of the backgrounds that you downloaded from TI is you click this little plus symbol. It's the upper right corner of the list of backgrounds. You click this symbol, you hit add image, and there's also an option to add video because some people actually have video backgrounds, but for the sake of the contest, we're just going to look at adding an image. Hit add image, and this opens up your file explorer. You just go to whatever directory you downloaded the files to, and you just add those images in. And once you've added them, they're saved here in this list of backgrounds you can choose from. Using it in a contest, pretty easy. So you just open up that control. You would click on whichever background you want to use. I'm showing, for example, the yellow background here. And when you click on it, it displays on your screen. And this is what everybody sees if you're the timer. And once you're done and the speaker finishes their presentation and it's time to move on to the next one, you have to remove that background. And the way you do it is you click on the one that says none. It's the upper left-hand corner. It's the very first background on the list. So You cycle through green, yellow, red. Once you're done, you hit none, and that restores just your natural camera without any digital effects or backgrounds. So if your timer is able to do this, I would definitely recommend doing it. If not, no worries, just use the regular timing cards. Now let's bring this to recording. And during a contest, some people may wish to have their speeches recorded, and it's up to the preference of each speaker. Some like to have it recorded, some don't. But if you do want to record, there's a few things you need to learn to know how to do it and do it effectively. So the first thing you need to look at is, where is the record control? And if you're a host or co-host, as we mentioned, you automatically have recording privileges. And record button is at the bottom of your Zoom window. It's the button that says record. And when you click on it as a host or co-host, you'll get a couple options that come up. There's either record on this computer, meaning it actually saves it to your hard drive, or you can record to a cloud, as you prefer. And you just hit record. And when you're recording, you should see, this is what you should see. At the bottom of your screen, the record button should now look like a pause and stop button. And on the upper left, you'll see the pause and stop button as well, and also a little icon that says recording. And also in the participant list, you or anybody else who's recording, they're going to have this little recording icon visible. And if you're recording to your computer, it looks like a dot in a circle. If you're recording to the cloud, it's a dot in a cloud. And as you can see right now, we are recording this meeting as we speak. So that's how you record. Pretty simple. It basically, it's up to the preference of each contestant. But as we said, hosts and co-hosts, they have recording privileges by default. If anybody else wants to record, they need to get permission from the host. And ideally, if some or all of the contestants want to have their speeches recorded, the easiest thing to do, which is what we did during the district contest, is we just have the host or the co-host record all the speeches individually, put all the recordings into a shared folder, a Google Drive or some other shared folder, and then send the link out to the contestants afterward. And so anybody who wants to get a copy of the recording, they can just go to that folder and grab a copy. This is useful if you have a larger number of participants who want to record, because otherwise, if you have, let's say, 5, 10, 15 people and they all want to record their speeches, then the host has to go through the list of participants and individually give permission to each one to record. And so if you have a large number of people who want to record their stuff, it's usually easier to just have the host record everything, drop it into a shared folder, send the link out afterwards, and anybody who wants a copy of their speech can go in and just grab one. If it's only 1 or 2 people who want to record, then yeah, it's usually easier to just give that 1 or 2 people permission. And the way you do it is the host, they just hover over the name, they hit that little blue more button, allow record, and the person can record. And only the host, however, is able to give permission to record. So by default, the host and co-host can record. Anybody else wants to record, they need permission from the host. One thing that's very important to remember, if you want to record inside a breakout room, and as I mentioned before, a contest is held inside a breakout room called the contest room, the person recording has to be inside the breakout room. If you're in the main room, say the lobby area, and you hit record, all you're going to record is what's going on in the main lobby area. You're not going to record anything inside the breakout room. So if someone wants to record, whether the host or a participant, it has to be done from inside the room that you're recording in. And so the other thing to bear in mind is if you're a host and you're recording, you want to make sure that you're going to be inside the room for the duration of the speech or the duration of the recording period, because hosts and co-hosts are going to be moving back and forth pretty regularly during the meeting. So make sure that whoever is doing the recording inside the breakout room doesn't get moved out themselves. Otherwise, you can end up losing part of the recording while they're away. So just plan ahead, make sure you have one person who is designated to record during a particular time frame. So you play with the start and stop buttons, and once you stop recording, it stops recording. And then once you close the actual meeting at the end of the Zoom session, then Zoom will compile and render the video, and then it will save it to either the computer or the cloud. And if you save it to your computer, once it's done rendering, it automatically pops up with the directory it's saved to. A few last minute caveats, some tips and tricks here about how to record in a contest. if you're going to record, make sure it is in fact recording before the speaker is introduced. You know, in the previous slides, we looked at what it looks like when you're recording. You get the little record icon. Make sure that that's up and running before the speaker is introduced. If they start introducing a speaker that wants to be recorded and you don't see that icon, then the Zoom host should just you know, announce to the chair, you know, could you please wait 1 second while you wait for the recording to start. And Alex, I see you raised your hand here.
Yes, thank you, Michel. I wanted to know then, because I'm just coming on this call a little bit late, but when we're talking about recordings, are things recorded automatically into the cloud, or are they going to be recorded onto our computer?
Usually you'll get the option to select either cloud or computer. And in most cases, it may depend on your individual settings, but for me at least, it automatically records to my computer. You may have different setting depending on your setup, but if you do have the option to record to either cloud or computer, it'll show you that in the little menu that comes up. So either record to cloud or record to computer, and you can select one or the other.
So then the second question then is that because these are so onerous, these are huge files that I can't necessarily email, I put them up onto our club site, or how do I get them to people?
Usually what I end up doing is I just load them into a Google Drive and just give the link to whoever needs to get it. And, for example, the session that I recorded on Monday, that was about just under 600 megabytes. So it's a good size file, and it can get even higher than that. So, but a Google Drive can hold up to 15 gigabytes. So if it's a very large file, just drop it into a Google Drive, a shared folder, then send them the link to go get it.
Okay, and then finally, a third question. I won't hog all the questions, but my third question then would be, do we record per speaker, or is it's an overall recording of the entire session in the breakout?
Well, so I can answer that here. It says, usually you would record just the speeches, unless someone else asked to be recorded. And there's a couple ways you can do this. If only one person wants their speech recorded, you may just record it for that one person. But the easiest thing to do, which is what we did for the district contest, is we recorded all the speakers, you know, whether they wanted to be recorded or not. And what we would do is we start the recording before the first speaker starts. As soon as that first speaker is done, you immediately hit the stop button and then immediately restart the recording. And you repeat that until the last person is done. And this is for a couple reasons. One is that when you stop and then restart the recording, it saves each one as a separate file. If you just hit pause, it's not going to save it, split into different files. And so if you you stop and restart between each speaker, it saves it as a separate file for each speaker. That way it's a lot easier for the speakers to go back into the Google Drive and just grab their own speech.
Excellent point. Okay, and then probably in order to fix the notion of people who do or who don't wish to be recorded, if we have a blanket statement saying this is going to be recorded, then okay, thank you.
So to say, you know, there's that blanket statement at the front, say we're going to be recording, and if anybody doesn't want their speech recorded, you can just not record that one. But otherwise, just start and stop between each one. And I would say between each one, you stop it and then immediately restart it. That way you don't forget to restart it before the next one, because it's pretty easy to get lost in some other task between speakers. So stop, immediately restart, and repeat until the last person is done, and then save all the files to the Google Drive afterwards.
Okay, and a quick question about when you stop and restart, when the video is rendering, can you still start recording, or do you have to wait until the first video renders and then we can record?
Well, usually the video only starts rendering after you close the Zoom meeting. And I've never actually attempted to start another meeting while the video is rendering, but you probably could. But that's something you can always try out on your own with your own club. But basically, when you stop the recording, you can immediately restart it. It doesn't actually start rendering or compiling the video until you close the entire meeting. So you don't need to wait anything. You just hit stop, you hit the restart immediately after that, and just go on to the next one. So so there's no delay from starting and restarting. So just stop, restart, until all the speakers are done. And then later on, once the entire contest is done, you close the Zoom meeting, then it renders it, and it saves each one as a separate file in this directory. So that's probably the easiest way to do it. Just record each one, give the link out to all the contestants. Anybody who wants a copy of their speech can go grab it. If they don't want a copy, they don't need to do anything. So it's pretty straightforward. And that brings us to the fun part, which is breakout rooms. Now, you may recall in the previous presentation on Monday, we talked about having breakout rooms, moving people from one breakout room to the other. And I won't go into all those details again, but we will look at the actual mechanics of how to set up a breakout room, how to move someone from a breakout room to the other, how to move yourself from one room to the other. So we'll start off by defining what is a breakout room. How do you actually set up and use the breakout rooms? Some of the simple breakout room controls, creating the breakout rooms, assigning participants to the room. A few options you really need to look at very closely before you open up the room, and some of the basic controls after you open it, and how do you move one person from a breakout room to the other, and how does the host and co-host move themselves, and finally I'll put a little checklist or summary at the end to go through. So we'll start with the basics. A breakout room is just a separate private room within a meeting. So right now we are in a breakout room, and simultaneously Danielle Riendeau is doing the French session in a separate breakout room. And the area that we were in before we got moved here, that would be sort of the main area that we usually call the lobby area. And from there, you can move people to various breakout rooms. And there's a few reasons why you'd want a breakout room. It allows to have multiple sessions at the same time. You can have briefings or discussions. If you want to isolate or sequester the participants, for example, as for a table topic contest or the evaluation contest, or you want that private room for the judges and the ballot counters to do their tasks, you would create separate breakout rooms for each one of those groups. To use breakout rooms, you have to enable them in the meeting settings. So that's the web page we looked at before, your Zoom account, where you actually go into the basic settings and make sure that's enabled first. And then you actually launch it and modify it after you start the Zoom meeting. And we'll look at all that in just a couple of minutes here. And just to summarize, we mentioned on Monday that for a contest, ideally you want to create at least 5 breakout rooms. You can always do more, in addition to the main lobby area. So you're going to have the main contest room where you actually hold the contest and all the speeches. There is the contestant holding room where you sequester contestants. There is the judge holding room where they wait to be called in to show their ballots. And then there's the actual ballot counting room where the judges and the timers, they show their ballots. And you can also create a optional small conference room. This is just sort of a utility room that you can use if you need to get a small gathering or a small conference between Zoom hosts or anyone else needs to have a small private conversation. You can always go there. So we want to create at least 5 breakout rooms for a contest, and we're going to look at the mechanics of actually doing that right now. So we mentioned the first thing you got to do, you need to set up the breakout rooms or allow the breakout rooms in your account settings. So you go back to your basic Zoom account, log in like we did before, go to the meeting settings, and this time you're going to go to the advanced settings, or you just scroll all the way down until you see breakout rooms. And you want to make sure that breakout rooms have been enabled, and also want to make sure that you've selected allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. And this is very handy because this allows you to assign the participants before you actually open the breakout rooms. And this is really handy for an event, say like a contest, or an even larger event like a TLI or an online conference, because you may have potentially hundreds of people they need to assign, and you want to assign them to a particular breakout room in advance. And the way you do this is the host will see all the people as they come in, and they can assign them one at a time to a breakout room. And then when it's time to actually open the breakout rooms, all they got to do now is hit open, and Zoom automatically sends everybody off to their respective breakout rooms. If you didn't have this selected beforehand, then what you'd have to do is you open the room, then you move them one at a time into the breakout room, which can be very time consuming. So just use the time at the beginning, for example, during the plenary session or during a keynote speech or something. The Zoom host is working behind the scenes to sort of pre-assign everybody to their breakout rooms. And as soon as the breakout rooms are open, they hit open rooms, and away they go. So just make sure that these settings are selected before you do anything else. And let's introduce everybody to your basic breakout room controls. And so at the bottom of your screen in your Zoom meeting controls, you'll see that little symbol with the 4 squares. That's your breakout room controls. And if you're a host, you'll see some additional capabilities. When you click on this, you're going to see this little window that pops up in the middle of your screen. take a closer look here. And these are the basic breakout room settings. First thing you want to do is decide how many breakout rooms do you want. And as we mentioned, you want at least 5 for a contest. Next, you want to look through the settings and make sure that assign manually is selected. And what that means is when you assign manually, it lets the host assign someone to a breakout room. And if you select assign automatically, then Zoom is just going to automatically distribute everybody amongst all the breakout rooms automatically, equally among all the breakout rooms. So if you had 100 people attending and you have 5 breakout rooms and you select assign automatically, then Zoom is going to put 20 people in each breakout room. And that's not ideal for a contest, because ideally at the start of the contest, you want to make sure that everybody goes to the main contest room to begin with. So make sure that you have assigned manually. That way the host can manually assign everybody to the contest room. And that way they'll go straight there once you open the breakout rooms. So select the number of breakout rooms, assign manually, and then you hit create. Now, when you hit create, you've created the breakout rooms. They haven't actually opened or started yet. So there's still a few settings you want to check first. Once you hit create, you're going to see this window over here. And as you can see, it says not started yet. So there's still a few settings you want to use. And you'll see the list of rooms. And in this example, I just created 3 rooms. And you can go through each one. You can rename them. And I would suggest renaming them, as we said before, contest room, judge holding room, ballot counting room, etc. So there's no confusion about who goes in which room. And to assign people, you just select each room in turn. If you want to assign everybody to the first room, say the contest room, you just click assign, and you see this little tab here that pops up, and that's a list of everybody who can be assigned to this room. And in this example, there's only 1 person there, but you would see a list of names. And if you want to assign someone to room 1, you just click the little checkbox, and they get assigned to room 1. And then once you open the rooms, you'll drop them into that room. And as we said, in a contest, pretty much everybody is going to be in the contest room to begin with. And then later on, you're going to move certain people from one breakout room to the other. Now, let's say you realize, whoops, I didn't create enough breakout rooms, or oops, I selected assign automatically. Then all you need to do is hit recreate. You click this button at the bottom here, and that'll actually take you back to this screen over here. You can fix whatever settings you needed, hit create again, and you go back to here. Right? And then once you're happy with all this, there's one more thing you need to look at, and that is the options button. And I highlighted something in red is very important, which we'll get to in a second here. As we mentioned, in the breakout rooms, you want to assign pretty much everybody to the main contest room to begin with. And as you assign people to a room, you're going to see the list of people assigned to each room. So here we have room 1, is the 1 person assigned there. It also shows you a number here to show how many people are currently assigned. And as you can see, it's not yet started. But before you open the room to start it, you need to click on the options button here. And it's highlighted in red because it's very important. So the first thing you want to look at is automatically move all assigned participants into the breakout rooms. And when you say automatically move all assigned participants into the breakout rooms, it means that when you assign someone and you move someone there, they just go without any further input from the user. If you don't have that selected, what's going to happen is you'll assign someone to the breakout room, and the person can actually see a little message that pops up and say, the host has invited you to join this room, and you have to hit accept to actually go there. And a lot of people, they may not be familiar with that. They don't know how to do that, or they may not even think to look at that icon. And so if you hit automatically move all participants, then it automatically just moves everybody without any further action from the people in question. And the big one, of course, is make sure that this item here in red, breakout rooms close automatically after 25 minutes or any other figure, is deselected, because if you have that selected, the breakout rooms are going to close automatically after that period of time. And so potentially you could have the breakout rooms all close in the middle of a speech during a contest, and that's not a good thing. So make sure that this is not selected. That way the breakout rooms, they just stay open indefinitely for the duration of the contest. Okay, so automatically move all assigned participants. Make sure breakout rooms close automatically is selected off. And when you're happy with all the settings, you click open all rooms. And when you get to open all rooms, the first thing you want to look is at the top of your screen, you'll see breakout rooms in progress. This means breakout rooms are open, they're up and running. And if you see a little countdown clock here instead of in progress, so if you see breakout rooms 24:59, 24:58, 24:57, that means you forgot to check the the previous item we talked about here, breakout rooms close automatically. So that means you have to close all rooms, go back to the previous screen, check the setting you want, open all rooms again, and it'll still keep the assignments you had before. But just make sure it shows in progress, and if it does, you're good. And from there, you have the list of people that are not assigned, meaning people who've just joined the meeting since you opened up the breakout rooms. You can assign them to any breakout room you like. And the way you do that is you just hover over an unassigned person, and you click assign to room 1, 2, 3, or whatever a number of rooms you have, and that sends them to the breakout room. So this will assign the people to the breakout rooms. If for whatever reason you need to broadcast a message to everybody, we're saying, everybody, the contest closes in 10 minutes, please get out of here. Just hit broadcast message to all, and this sends a little text message to everybody in the breakout rooms. And once you've assigned someone to a breakout room, you can move them from one to the other. So let's say you have someone in the main contest room and you need to move them to the contestant holding room or to the judge holding room. You just hover over that person's name, and here you're going to see move to, and this tab pops up with a list of rooms you can move them to. And if you want to send them to room 2, you select room 2, and it automatically moves them, and it takes maybe 5 or 10 seconds to actually move them. Once they're in the room, you'll see this little green dot. It's filled. It's a green dot, which shows they're actually inside the room now. And you can verify that the move is complete that way. And only the host is going to see move to, because they're the only ones to actually move people from one to the other. So just go through the list, see who it is you want to move, hit move to, select the destination, and away they go. Now, if you want to move yourself from one room to the other, let's say you're a co-host and you need to be in the ballot counting room or the judge holding room, you can go there yourself. All you got to do is go through the list, see what room it is you want to join. Let's say you want to join room 1 over here. So in this scenario, I'm in room 2. I want to join room 1. So I just click join next to room 1. Join room 1, yes, and that sends me to room 1. If you need to leave the breakout rooms and go back to the main lobby area, what we need to do there is hit leave room at the bottom right of your screen, and that sends you back to the lobby area. It doesn't send you out of the meeting entirely, it just sends you back to the lobby area, out of the breakout rooms. Right? So that's a little bit about the movement. Just find out what room you want to move to, click join, and away you go. And I put together a little summary here, a little checklist that I'd recommend to everybody. It's not an exhaustive list, but this will pretty much keep you out of trouble if you're trying to run an online contest with breakout rooms. So first thing is, make sure you enable breakout rooms in the Zoom meeting settings before anything else. Click that 4 square button at the bottom of your screen to open up the breakout rooms. Make sure you have at least 5 selected. Make sure assign manually and then create. Go through the list of breakout rooms, rename them as you need to. Assign people to the rooms, and as we mentioned, pretty much everybody goes to the main contest room to start off with, so to send everybody there. And make sure you select the options before you open anything, and ensure that automatically move all assigned participants is selected. Make sure the important thing is deselect breakout rooms close automatically. When you're happy with all the settings, click open all breakout rooms. Anybody else joins after the breakout rooms are open, you assign them to a new breakout room as needed. During the contest, the host moves people around as needed, and the co-host can move themselves as needed as well. And as we mentioned, if you need to change a breakout room setting, if you haven't opened it yet, just hit recreate. If you've opened them already, make sure to close all rooms and then change the settings and then reopen it. And make sure to check the settings before you actually start the contest. You don't want to have a situation where you're 15 minutes into the speeches and you realize that, whoops, I have to go back and change the settings. So double check all the settings before you actually start the contest. Once you're happy, then the contest can proceed. All right. So it seems like a lot, but once you've done it a few times, a few practice sessions, you'll find it actually works very effectively. And that's pretty much all the technical aspects that you need to run a contest. So your screen sharing, there's your basic settings, the basic controls, and how to run breakout rooms. And so next we'll look at just a few general items to make sure you've checked off before the contest. Then we'll go through a list of references that you can use. So the general checklist, make sure that you've enabled the co-host assignment in the meeting settings. Also make sure the breakout rooms are assigned, like I said before, or enabled. go back and review that presentation we did on Monday, which is how to actually run a contest. That shows you how many breakout rooms to create, when to move judges, when to move contestants, and all that is covered in pretty good detail in that presentation. Get your Zoom team together, make sure that everybody knows who's a host, who's a co-host, who's recording, who's going to be with the judges, who's going to go where and when, and make sure to practice it thoroughly. Make sure that everybody, including the host, the co-host, and all the officials and contestants know how to use all those basic Zoom functions. The less that you have to explain during the contest, the faster it'll go. Determine if you're going to record, and if yes, decide who's going to record. Is it going to be one co-host? Is it going to be the participant themselves? And if they decide to record, just use those procedures we talked about. And create those 5+ breakout rooms and just use them like we talked about before in the previous slides, and move them from one person to the other, from one room to the other, as we talked about on Monday. And as we mentioned before, make sure all the breakout room settings are correct before you actually start the contest. And just to wrap everything up, there's a few basic references you can use if you want more details, some light reading here. There's a really good video that was put together by our Division C director, Kiman Chan. She explained basically all the basics of how to use Zoom. And this is a really good introductory video that you can send to anybody who's not really familiar with Zoom yet. And have them watch through this, and that combined with this presentation basically covers pretty much anything you need to know about how to use Zoom. As we mentioned before, you need to check a couple of your settings in your Zoom account. So we just use these links over here. If you want more details about what a host or host can't do and how to do it, and a few of the various tasks you can do, there's a few Zoom articles and help files over here. And some more details about breakout rooms over here. A good article about how to record. If you want to let someone who is accidentally removed from a meeting rejoin the meeting, here's how you do it. And of course, here's how you get the virtual timing backgrounds from Toastmasters.org. All right, so that's pretty much everything I had for today. So that's pretty much everything you'll need to actually run through an online contest.